agenda here. Okay, it looks like everybody's here. And we're going to do the invocation tonight, and the person that's going to help us out is Karen Dunn. And Karen is with the Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, and she is a leadership of women ages 18 and up. And thank you for being here. She's been a member of the church all of her life. And one thing I like is a short bio. Thanks. Come. So we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance followed by, let's see, who do we want to do that tonight? How about Pam White lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight? Let's scare her to death. And so let's please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I mean the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Come on up, Karen.
So very grateful to meet together tonight. And we ask that Thy Spirit might with us, that we might be able to gain ideas and thoughts that will help all the people of Santee and adjoining cities and counties. We're so grateful for all the good things we have in our lives. We're grateful to be living in this beautiful, free country. And we're grateful for all these people who are helping to serve and keep this country free and help us each to reach our potential. We're grateful for each other and pray that we can listen and gain insight from each other as we discuss ways that we can help. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Mrs. White?
Please join me in the pledge to our nation's flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Please take your seats. And see, the first thing up tonight is we're going to see Christian Wallace. Let's introduce him. Christian. Well, hold on a second. Let me back up. I didn't get the word that Virginia was going to be doing this introduction, so from the Healthcare District, Virginia Hall.
Yes. I'm Virginia Hall. I'm the president of the Grossmont Healthcare District this year, and I wanted you to all know that Barry Chance is retired, if you didn't already know that, and it's nice to see you all. And in his place, we have a new CEO, a wonderful man, Christian Wallace. He's a Navy veteran, and he's had over 27 years of leadership experience in the healthcare field, in the private sector, federal sector, government, and international healthcare settings. He holds a doctorate in healthcare administration from Central Michigan University and other, obviously, degrees. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and introduce him, and Christian Wallace.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Before you start, any other Navy veterans in the house? Well, there's your backup. Thank you for your service.
Always need a wingman. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Just a couple announcements on what we're doing at the Healthcare District at this point. We have an end of summer palooza going on in the office and the park next to our office in La Mesa. It's going to have come back to school type gear. We've got crafts and everything for the family, so bring the families out, please. We also started our grants program. We've got a lot of money in the grants program, about $1.3 million we're going to distribute over the next 6 months. I think the city of Santee ended up with part of that in 2019-2020, where the Grossmont Healthcare Occupation Center was given $100,000 out of these grants. That's what some of the funds are that went to help build that out. So we were very excited. This is our opportunity to be out in the community doing some good directly with you all. And we're doing strategic planning as well. So next Monday and Tuesday, we will have our next 3-year direction that we'll be able to share with you. I want to thank Marlene for helping us get through that process and her guidance and wisdom as well. So that's us. Thank you very much for having me today. I really look forward to serving the healthcare needs of your community. Thank you, sir.
Glad to have you. All right, now here's a little bit of fun for a minute. You know, we have a creek that runs through Santee. It's called Forester Creek, and it does from time to time get some debris that comes down from City of El Cajon. And we do our best to clean it up, but the people that do their best to help us clean it up is the World Mission Society Church of God. So I think there might be 1 or 2 members from that society. So come on down here, meet me in the middle. I have a little something for you. Don't be shy, everybody come down. Well, from the society, that is. Except for you guys, you gotta take pictures. All right, don't be shy, come right here in the middle. I'm gonna get in the middle, you can get with the Padre supporter. And who's your spokesman tonight? Person.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna hand that to you, because after I read this off, I'll give you a moment to say a couple words. Let me get my eyes here first. Now what's so funny about that? Just because you're a young guy and you don't need them?
They're starting to go.
They're starting to go. Go ahead, you squeeze in a little bit better, because I want to make sure everybody gets you on camera there. You guys are important, what you did was great, so.
Benito, did you want to play the short video first?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right, okay. So there's a short video.
It's only 20 minutes long. All right, let's watch the video.
We're a pretty small crew. There's only around 5 or 6 actual employees that work in the streets department. So for us to do this amount of work, it would take us days, maybe weeks. And it's nice to have everybody come together and knock out such a big job in such a little amount.
On behalf of the World Mission Society Church of God, Pastor Noah Yoon,
That's right, I'm going to be finished.
my heartfelt appreciation for all members of Santee City Council for tirelessly making our community extraordinary. Our members have prepared short performance to show their gratitude. I hope you will enjoy. Please stay healthy. May God bless you.
6 in the morning. As soon as you walk through that door, everyone needs you again. The world's out of order. It's not a sound when you're not around.
All day on your feet, heart. Keep that energy. I know
good job. You're doing a good job. Don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, matter, matter,
Well, I gotta tell you, I was in a great mood when I came in here tonight. Now I'm in a better mood. So thank you. We're ready to do this now, or did you want to do some karaoke? Okay. All right then. City of Santee Certificate of Appreciation, presented to World Missionary Society Church of God. The City of Santee wishes to congratulate and thank approximately 150 members from the church for their work in the unity to clean up Forester Creek in the City of Santee. In less than 2 hours. Those 6 employees that we were talking about in the film, that'd take them a long time. They'd never get it done in 2 hours. And they're a good crew.
Is it the power of unity?
Power of unity. So they cleaned up in 2 hours a voluminous amount of trash. Matter of fact, it was 30 cubic yards and debris from that riverbed. Their hard work helped tremendously to improve our environment as well as the natural habitat for wildlife, local wildlife. You were there too?
Yeah, he supported a lot.
Sam Rinsberry, he works with us. He helps out and makes sure that everything gets in the right place, I think, doesn't he? Thank you too, Sam, for your time there. So it just goes to show you that when you live in the Spirit, you walk in the Spirit, you become the Spirit. Correct? All right then. I'll present this to you.
Oh, thank you.
We'll take a quick photograph. Why don't you come on up? And you can come on up. And then we'll let you have something to say. I'll get out of the way. How's that sound?
Oh, yeah. We prepared the song.
I'm ready. Do you have the lyrics? But you don't want to hear me sing.
Okay, let's look this way first. Hold up.
There you go.
Big smile. We can't look out masks now.
Oh, you did a good job. Would you count 1, 2, 3?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
아버지 means Korean and father in Korean. Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Santee.
어머니, Santee.
You know what that means in English? Santee. There you go.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
And here's a microphone, and why don't you say a couple things? And we'll let this gentleman here hold on to that.
Thank you. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. You did a
Right,
good
second.
job.
If this doesn't work, then you can grab the mic off my
Oh,
collar.
yeah,
I'll just stand closer.
I need your help. First of all, I'd like to give eternal thanks to God Elohim, our Father and Mother, and thank you for inviting us. Nearly you did a good job. The reason we are doing this kind of good deeds is to glorify our true God, God the Father and God the Mother. We will do continually with love of God, and let's share God's love. Are you ready? Father, Mother, we love you. We love you. We love you. Wow. You did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. Thanks for pushing these guys along. Your turn. Thanks. All right, that takes us to rest of the program. Any items to be reordered, deleted, or added to the menu tonight? None?
No, sir.
City attorney? Nothing. City clerk?
No, sir.
And that'll take us to the consent calendar. Any speaker slips on that?
No, sir.
Okay. Any questions by the council on the consent calendar? If not, we'll take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Go ahead.
Oh, all of everybody wants. Okay, we'll have a motion by McNellis, second by Hall. Please prepare to vote.
Prepare the votes.
Say what? Have we all voted?
Shows enter.
Yeah, just there you go. Oh.
Our screens were locked. We didn't vote.
Nope.
Revote.
All right, let's do that again. It passed either way, so.
I think I'd be the first time I voted no on something.
You sure you're being rebels?
Can you please vote again?
Let's do that again. See, I told you we were gonna have fun tonight.
Mayor
Please
Mitchell?
vote. Please lock in your vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. That takes us to the non-agenda public comment.
We have 5 speakers
All right.
for this section. The first speaker I have is Tyler James. Mr. James, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, my name is Tyler James, and I've heard that Santee is going to discuss the possibility of allowing marijuana businesses to begin operating here, overturning the current ban. I hope you will consider the ways that this could change safety. For example, KUSI aired a story last week about the increased number of deaths caused by impaired drivers in San Diego County. District Attorney Summer Steffen said there's a marked increase in combinations of alcohol and drugs, and we need to get the message out that mixing alcohol and marijuana is a prescription for disaster. People don't seem to be getting the message that driving while high is illegal and extremely dangerous. Marijuana impairs a person's judgment and coordination. It reduces their ability to estimate time and distance and slows their reaction to unexpected situations like somebody braking in front of them. Like many people my age, I see a lot of marketing for marijuana, yet there are very few warnings about the dangers. Several surveys have been published showing that about half of the heavy marijuana users do not believe that driving while high is dangerous. Later tonight, you will be discussing the local roadway safety plan. I hope you will consider how an increased supply of marijuana and more advertising will affect roadway safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
Next speaker I have is Kelly McCormick. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kelly McCormick. I'm a public health educator and director of a youth mentor program. The Los Angeles Times recently ran a front page story, actually, it was on Sunday, and the headline was, "Illegal Pot Invades California's Deserts, Bringing Violence, Fear, and Ecological Destruction." It was written by Jacqueline Cosgrove and Louis Sahagan. The article states that Prop 64 promised to end the black market cultivation and sale of marijuana in the state. But in their words, things haven't quite worked out that way. Today, the pot industry is struggling, and as much as 80% of pot sold in California comes from the black market. The head of the DEA's Los Angeles Field Division said, quote, "There's more black market marijuana than ever before, much more than prior to Prop 64. The rise of pot growing in the Mojave Desert began shortly after Prop 64 was approved. Law enforcement says many of the large operations are run by heavily armed cartels who intimidate local residents into giving up land and water. The spread of illegal grows has coincided with an increase in violence. The executive director of a Southern California Marijuana Trade Association says, quote, "There are more illegal pot farms than ever, undercutting legal growers so severely they can't survive under the current law." The Times also points out that the tax revenues are not anywhere close to the levels officials had expected, and things are going so badly for the industry, the state is considering a $100 million bailout. I'm sharing this because it's more evident every day that this experiment is not working. The black market continues to grow despite what people were told when they voted 5 years ago. Meanwhile, cities with regulated pot have aggressive advertising for high THC marijuana products, attracting new users to a drug that is more addictive and more dangerous than ever before. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker I have is Kathleen Lippett.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Kathleen Lippett. I'm a public health educator and public health practitioner, and for over 20 years. My master's is in health promotion. Health promotion is basically encouraging people to make healthy and safe choices and discouraging them from making unhealthy and unsafe choices. And in consideration of, and also I'm lucky enough to be from the city of Poway, where our mayor very sternly, staunchly stood up and said there is no amount of money that would make me think that this is a good idea. Unfortunately, in Poway, we have not had a plethora of illegal, illicit marijuana either grows or stores, because the municipalities that say no to begin with find it much easier to control. Once the city adopts regulations, the black market hides in plain sight. They thrive with it. It's also, I think, important to ask yourself, what do you want for your children, for the people that live here? Ask yourself, what are the benefits to them? Will it make them better husbands, fathers, children, sisters, brothers, workers, better at school? It will do none of those things. In fact, it will compromise all of those things. Unfortunately, there's a lot of political influence, and you'll hear a lot of information, especially from marijuana lobbyists, who will come and they will provide what they'll tell you is research, but it's industry-funded research. So it's important to recognize that there's a conflict of interest when they come and speak. I have no conflict of interest, and I hope that you will make a wise decision. I think otherwise the meetings will become dominated by marijuana people. We've seen cities that have done this, and from that point on, the work that they do for the people is diverted, and they spend most of their time dealing with the industry and their lobbyists. So the high potency products that will come, the kids, it is really, it raises the risk of addiction, and the industry, just like the tobacco industry, they need kids when they're adolescents. If they don't reach them when they're adolescents, the chances of them becoming users and long-term customers are not very good. So they reach them on their social media and every platform that they can find. And when they tell you that that's not what they want to do,
I'm sorry, ma'am, your time is up. Can I have Becky Rapp?
Time.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Becky Rapp. I'm a mother and a youth group mentor. A few weeks ago, an article in the Union Tribune caught my eye when I read the headline, San Diego police ask for public health to fight disturbing surge in violent crimes. San Diego Police Department stated that gang-related shootings have increased 129% since January. This is staggering when considering that this incredible spike is calculated over just the last 6 months. San Diego Police Chief told San Diego Union Tribune, whether it's gang violence or family violence, it just seems like people are willing to go from 0 to 100 for no darn reason. It's been proven that marijuana can and will increase the likelihood of violent behaviors. Going from 0 to 100 for no darn reason is just one of the adverse effects of heavy marijuana use. It's been proven that marijuana can cause violent behavior through increased aggressiveness, paranoia, personality changes. The marijuana being sold today with THC levels upwards of 90% are only compounding the issue. Many cities in our state and around the country are seeing this same surge in violent crimes, and it's important to note that legalization and normalization of recreational marijuana use, promoted in other cities like Seattle, Portland, and Denver, are having these same negative effects, and their violent crime numbers are skyrocketing. Recommend taking the proper steps in limiting marijuana sales and prohibiting advertising in the forthcoming ordinance. Advertising only decreases young people's perception of harm, leading them to a lifetime of marijuana use. Marijuana use that will inevitably lead them to violence and mental health issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last speaker I have is Michael Ranson.
Thanks very much. So I'm on a different topic than that. That's very important, and I appreciate those comments. But I'm here to say thanks very much for Santee Salutes and for the Patriotic Porch. And I appreciate community services and special events doing that Patriotic Porch. And I think you had a good result. I did learn that the city needs a little more notice on those types of things, I think, to actually promote them in a better way. So I'm going to give you a notice right now. My wife and I will donate another $100 for next year's Patriotic Porch as part of Santee Salute. So that's a year's notice. And I'm happy to help out if that's not enough. So also, I just want to say, did you start my timer? Can I start over? No. I'm going to say I have about a minute left, I guess. 2 minutes, okay, great. I won't take it. Parks Make Life Better Month. Still, we're in July, Parks Make Life Better Month. And I wanted to ask a couple questions about Spark. And feel free to tell me to take it to Spark, but I want to start here. I know that Spark raises money for for the children's and seniors. In fact, the last agenda said that, or the proclamation that you did last meeting says, while the majority of the city's recreational amenities and programs are funded entirely through the city's general fund, others receive support and fundraising efforts of the Santee Park and Recreation Committee, which is Spark, and they have been fundraising on behalf of the city's recreation program since fiscal year 1995-96. In fiscal year 2020 and 21, Spark's fundraising proceeds help provide $5,000 towards senior and teen recreation programs and $955 towards youth and senior recreation programs. So that's great, but last year we had a pandemic, and this year I think our main fundraising event for Spark has been postponed until I think 2022, I'm not sure yet. So I had a couple of questions, and I wondered, what will Spark be doing to raise funds over the next year for the following year's worth of funds? And how will our community services director and department be assisting and or working with this new citizen volunteer committee? And I mean, it's not a new committee, but you have several new members. I know you appointed new members. You have a new chair, which I noticed in the last couple months. And I wondered if any of those new members, what input do they have, or does the new chair have, on any changes or improvements that can be made to Spark? So I know those are all Spark related, but I also know, Mr. Mayor, that you appoint members of Spark, I believe. And I wondered if I should just take all these questions to Spark, or maybe Spark could get together with the community services and come back with some sort of a report. I don't know. It's even appropriate for me to ask that, but there you go.
Thank you. Actually, I think you're asking the same question that was asked at our community policing committee the other day, which is, what do we do? You know, it's easy for us to go through all these committees and do things for all these years, and then, you know, there's a time when, you know, we begin to start having more and more new people involved, and we have more and more new people come to the community and go, well, I haven't been here that long, I don't know what's going on. And so what we're doing is we're going to bring back and talk about what our goals were, what our objectives were, why were we even created. So maybe we should do the same thing for Spark and maybe it's time for that for all of our committees, now that I think about it. And that way, I know there's people on our council even that weren't around when those things were created, so might be a good idea. And also, maybe we could think about doing some kind of strategic planning with those committees also, so that there's a better idea of what input is appropriate, not appropriate, how much, and whatever. I don't even know what that looks like, just kind of throwing that out there. So maybe we could do that. Bill, you guys up for that?
Certainly, and as far as this year for fundraising, we're October 16th, 5 to 8 o'clock, set to Saturday at Town Center Community Park. We're doing Santee Brews and Bites, which is pretty self-explanatory, and there'll be music. And it raises funds for the teen center, park improvement projects, recreation scholarship program, which provides financial assistance to qualifying Santee children, teens, and seniors.
Okay.
So looking forward to seeing everyone there. From 5 to 8 on Saturday, October 16th.
Okay. We can't get real specific with questions and answers during public comment that's non-agendized, but I think that it gives direction to staff.
Thank you, and I'll just say also thank you. I noticed the survey you're doing for the Weston Park and the Weston, is it park equipment or playground equipment? I saw that on social media, and that's awesome too, so thanks very much.
Thank you.
No further speakers.
Okay, that takes us to item number 10, which is a public hearing and resolution adopting the sixth cycle housing element, general plan amendment number 2019-2. A negative declaration under the California Environmental Quality Act. And Melanie, you going to give us a what's up on that?
I am going to introduce our consultant who will actually be giving the PowerPoint presentation. Veronica, are you
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Oh, well, before you start, I just wanted to say one thing. We're very pleased to bring this item to you tonight because we are running close to a deadline to adopting a housing element for this next cycle. And I wanted to let the council know that should we adopt our housing element tonight, we will be the fourth in the San Diego region to be in that category. And so all the cities have been working furiously to get certified housing elements. So with that, I'd like to introduce Veronica Tam. She's been with us working on the housing element since 2019, and she will walk us through the highlights of the housing element tonight. Go ahead, Veronica.
Thank you, Melanie. And I'm going to go ahead and do a very brief presentation on the housing element. So basically, the housing element is part of your general plan. It's one of the 7 mandated elements of the general plan. It's a little different from the rest of the general plan in that it's subject to very detailed statutory requirements, and it must be updated every 8 years. What also sets the housing element apart from the rest of the general plan is that it also has to be reviewed by a state agency for compliance with state law. The agency we're dealing with is the State Department of Housing and Community Development. The housing element update also is subject to statutory deadline. Essentially, the law says that we must adopt the housing element within 120 days from April 15, 2021. That gives our drop dead date the August 13, and that's why Melanie mentioning that we are running close to a deadline. The housing element, as we mentioned before, is subject to really stringent statutory requirements, and it really prescribes the content of the housing element. Specifically, we have to do an assessment of the housing needs in the community, what are the current needs in the community, and also what are the future projected housing needs. We need to analyze the opportunities and constraints for the production, preservation, and improvement of housing.
specifically when it comes to opportunity, the state is looking for resources and site inventory. Do you have enough areas that are zoned to allow housing to develop over the next 8 years? And that's being measured by to what extent your site capacity is adequate to meet the regional housing needs assessment. As part of the housing element, we also need to look at your past accomplishments. What works and what doesn't work in the city of Santee, and how are we going to adjust that in order to make sure that next 8 years that the city is facilitating housing production. And finally, on the programs, we need to outline the programs and commitments to address housing needs in the community. So in updating this housing element, like Melanie mentioned, we started in October 2019. We did a presentation before the City Council with an overview of the housing element update process and requirements, and certainly did not anticipate the difficulty that we faced during the pandemic. So on March 11, that was a week before the pandemic, the shutdown, the stay-at-home order came in. We did another presentation of the City Council, our staff did another presentation of the City Council relating to the regional housing needs assessment and residential site inventory, and where the City Council had opportunity at that meeting to select and dismiss prospective sites for meeting the regional housing needs allocation. On May 25th, there was yet another presentation before the City Council about affordable housing strategy in the community that the City of Santee may be able to take advantage of. One being the concept of inclusionary housing, but also at that particular meeting, the city determined that it's not yet the time to deal with inclusionary. So that's not being included in the housing element. In June, there was another presentation before the City Council, kind of with regarding inclusionary requirements. But as I mentioned before, that was determined as not yet the timing for it. The city was concerned about that being constraining to market rate and affordable housing and development with the inclusionary requirement. Then in late October, last year, there was a presentation before the City Council relating to a range of stakeholder meetings on inclusionary and survey on inclusionary that's being done in San Diego County. And the City Council directed staff to conduct another workshop directly with the stakeholders. January 2021, there was discussions regarding the stakeholders and the inclusionary in the city, discussions between stakeholders and the City Council and inclusionary. And later on, January 27, 2021, we presented a draft housing element for the City Council to consider. After that, we submitted the draft housing element to the state for their 60-day review. And in April, the city staff provided an update on the status of the housing element. Essentially, on April 28th, the state released a new guidelines on the affirmatively furthering the housing requirement because it was because the guidelines were released late. We were not able to incorporate that as part of the draft housing element, and have since been working on that component of the housing element. So when the state looked at the housing element, there was just a few comments related to the housing element. One relating to accessory dwelling unit, encouraging the city to look at additional tools to facilitate the development of ADUs, and also provide some kind of an extension to your current fee waivers until 2024. The other comment is relating to group homes for 7 and above, more people, and the state would like the City of Santee and every jurisdiction that in the state to relook at the group homes requirements and, if appropriate, adjust it to facilitate group homes development. in the community. And the most significant component of change in the housing element is the affirmatively furthering fair housing, AB 686. And as I mentioned before, the guidance to how to comply with this new state law was not released until April 28th this year, after we actually completed the 60-day review. And between April and June, we've been working very hard with the state on getting the AFFH approved by the state. Based on our conversation, they're comfortable with what we have done. So the analysis has been incorporated in the housing element as Appendix E, and the meaningful actions to affirmatively furthering fair housing has been updated and incorporated into Program 13. So your current housing element contains a range of housing programs. Most of them are carry forward and continuing housing programs that the city has been providing your community with. In this particular slide, there is not any new programs. These are all continuing programs, but updated to reflect current conditions. In the next slide, in this second slide, the inventory of available sites and monitoring no net loss, by right approval of projects of 20% affordable, accessory dwelling units, how to facilitate that. Those are new programs, and Program 13, affirmatively furthering housing, fair housing, those are new programs compared to your current housing or your fifth cycle housing element. Those are new because of the new state law. So Program 9 really is like the centerpiece of the housing element. The city, under your current general plan and zoning capacity, would not offer enough capacity to accommodate your regional housing needs assessment. And that's why staff took a lot of efforts in 2019 and 2020 to select sites for rezoning in order to accommodate the regional housing needs allocation. And this map shows some of the sites that are being proposed for rezoning. And the city has 3 years to complete the rezoning. The other program that we talked about, by right approval, this is required by state law. If the sites are being rezoned after the statutory deadline of the housing element, then all the rezoned sites would be subject to by right approval if the project comes in with 20% affordable to lower income households. And this slide shows where the by right, where the sites would be subject to the by right. And Program 13 is the new program, and that's the one that we had to incorporate in order to meet the new requirement. Essentially, the AFFH, affirmatively furthering fair housing, is looking for cities to do step up on the outreach and education about fair housing issues, to make sure that the city promote mobility within your community, and that's the reason why we talked about the active transportation plan and the ADA transition plan. This some of the planning and implementation efforts that the city will be undertaking in the future years in order to help enhance mobility, particularly for persons and residents with disabilities. The other program that's incorporated in, or action incorporated in this fair housing program, is to develop incentives or mechanisms that can facilitate development of a variety of housing types. Specifically, the state was looking at workforce housing and larger units for large households. And another component of that is to promote affordable low-income housing in some of the opportunity sites identified in the housing element. So after adoption of the housing element, there are certainly actions that the council needs, the city needs to undertake. Specifically, that's related to Program 9 and Program 10. adequate sites for regional housing needs allocation by right approval to establish a process to provide for by right approval of projects with 20% affordable in the reuse sites and rezone sites. And also in special needs housing, there's been a lot of changes in new state law relating to special needs housing, so zoning code amendments to be consistent with state law. As we also mentioned before, the group homes, the program commitment is to review the zoning code and revise, if appropriate, to see how we can facilitate group homes development for group homes that accommodate more than 6 people. And also develop a monitoring procedure for fair housing, and also for no net loss that relates to how your sites are actually developed. If your sites are developed with fewer units, or that it's not developed with affordable housing, the city needs to monitor and make sure that you have remaining capacity to meet your regional housing needs allocation. And other follow-up actions would be to review and explore tools to facilitate affordable housing, affordable ADUs, maybe perhaps to see what you can do to facilitate these restricted ADUs that would be affordable to low-income households. And lastly, meaningful actions for the AFFH and ongoing outreach. So those are kind of action items following the adoption of the housing element that the city would be undertaking in the next few years. With that, I conclude my presentation. I'll give it back to Melanie.
Thank you very much, Veronica. We are ready to recommend that you open and close the public hearing, adopt the resolution, adopting the negative declaration pursuant to CEQA, and adopting the Housing Element 6 cycle for the period 2021 through 2029, authorize the transmittal to the State of California for certification, and direct staff to file a notice of determination. We are available to answer questions, both myself and Michael Coyne, and also Lindsay Puckett from BB&K is here to respond to any CEQA-related questions that might come up.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go to speaker slips first.
Yes, sir, we have 2 speakers. And as a reminder, you must submit your speaker slip before the start of the item. Linda Marca.
Good evening, my name is Linda Markell. I'm a longtime resident, mayor, vice mayor, and staff, council and staff. My question is, in Santee years ago, the general plan was developed because they didn't have the finances at that time to have committees. I was there. They did this general plan I couldn't stand, made us look like a bunch of hicks with the warm wood and how we were going to develop and everything. And here we had all this open space, and we really haven't grown much through all these years. If you look at the census, we're pretty dead in the water because we really don't have any housing to move up to or to move down for seniors and for young families starting out. Fanita Ranch would have been a beautiful opportunity to have a community that no one else has, but as you see, that's been delayed by the special interest groups who have only made money off of our city's general plan. They've manipulated it, and they've created a problem for people coming into Santee to just want to buy a house, or people that are older and seniors that want to downsize, but we have nowhere to go. And with the Fanita Ranch plan, there was 5 different housing situations going down there, a little bit for something from everybody. And I was wondering, is Santee still have the first-time buyers program? Because that program became obsolete quickly because what you allow to buy a house, you couldn't even buy a house for. So now Fanita Ranch is delayed 3 more years with construction costs going up. Now that price is going to be put down on the buyer. So we really need homes, and we need areas, but I'm not into this cram everybody in one spot and put all the low-income people in one spot. I believe that would be horrible. I think it should be spread out in all developments through the city of Santee, and the city needs to try to open up and let some of these developers come in and put nice communities in. Now there's good developers, there's bad developers, and everybody knows I deal with some that they're not my favorite. But then I see other ones that have, stepped up to the plate and hit a home run, and we should slam the door in their face. Now they're down in Chula Vista, and making housing there, when we could have had it here with the jobs and the families that need homes and people that want to downsize.
Ms. Markel, your time is up.
Thank you.
Jeff O'Connor. Jeff, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor, and City staff. I'm here tonight representing the VIA of San Diego and HomeFed Corporation. First of all, I'd like to congratulate City staff here in the new digs. It looks very nice. So over the last 3 or 4 years, the City staff has been working on this housing element. They've done an excellent job. We are here to support it. And if you have any questions for me, I'm here to answer them. But very good job. Thank you very much, staff.
Thank you. That's it?
No further speakers.
All right. Council, before I open it up to you, I've got things I want to say about this.
Harry.
So, I'm very concerned about this housing element on a lot of different levels. And I'm going to be talking about a lot of legislation. And unfortunately, this is going to take me a few minutes, but this is very important, not just to us here in Santee, but most likely to all of the other cities in the state of California, because we're all affected by this, and we're not affected very positively. So both the state of California, County of San Diego, they've all identified the fact that there's a lack of housing in the state of California. We have to recognize that there's a lot of reasons why there's a lack of housing in the state of California. One is the high cost, for one thing. The other is because there are individuals and groups that will do everything they can to stop us from building. And they don't just stop the city of Santee from building, or I should say our home builders from building, because we obviously don't build homes. So we have to look at those types of reasons why we have to take some really strong measures, okay? Because we're in a crisis. And I'm going to tell you that some of the way we can say we're in a crisis is because if we look at just County of San Diego first, in 2018 they identified housing as a crisis and directed staff to look into it and find ways of expediting the ability to build homes. So they had to find a way to solve that crisis. Pardon me? They haven't done it. And also the Board of Supervisors declared one of the reasons why we have, they believe there's a homeless issue is because we don't have affordable housing in our county. And I would be willing to say that that happens in a lot of other counties and cities throughout the entire state. When we have problems like that, that means the sheriff has to go to work and work a little bit harder. And what does that do? It costs more money to already stretched funding for these kinds of programs, whether it's a homeless shelter or if it's some other type of program like our HEAP and Heart and Hope. And so the county of El Cajon did some things where they actually had executive orders, or the equivalent of executive orders. And they call them minute orders there. And unlike the California, where the governor calls his executive orders. And they have been asking for a long time for information. They're not getting it. Nobody seems to have the answers. But they sure have the ability to try and create more and more legislation. In 2019, the governor actually signed an executive order issuing that cities are to develop more housing, and they should do it on state lands even. Excess property owned by the state of California. Now, regardless of whether you agree with the governor or not on many items, he's right, there is a crisis. It creates the homeless epidemic and, keeps people out of work. See what else we have here. Oh, let's say Senate Bill 330, that's a Housing Act of 2019, that was signed by the governor. Didn't help us a whole lot. Says that they declared a state housing emergency, statewide housing emergency. That's in effect till January 2025. And he says that you can suspend certain local restrictions that may hamper the development of housing. So now I think it's important for us to identify what those restrictions are that are hampering our ability to house, whether it's permits or otherwise. Matter of fact, it says in this order, or this law, that we're to expedite the application process for such residential development and ongoing forward by streaming the process to developers. Nobody really knows what that means. They have to come up with their own ideas and programs. But we have to make changes to statutory law, and what statutory law means, if you can correct me on this, Counselor, if I'm wrong or not, statutory law is written law. So if it's in writing, we have to do it. That took effect on January 1st, 2020. And then the governor came up with this other order, N2320, which took place in January 8, 2020, before we all got shut down for the pandemic, of course, and talked about, once again, a housing shortage in the state of California. And he says here, requires counties, cities, and other agencies to examine their own ability to provide shelter and house homeless individuals on a short-term emergency basis and coordinate with local authorities to provide help, shelter and housing. Can't do that if you don't have it. So it's important for us to actually start looking at that. So let's see what's going on recently in the state legislature. Senate Bill 9, that was proposed by Senator Atkins. It said we require local governments to ministerially approve housing development containing 2 residential units in single-family residential zones. And that would also require us to split urban lots. So what does that mean? That means where you have one house now, somebody can put another house on that lot, and ministerially means that we just have to do it. They don't have to come before us and ask permission. And it really doesn't matter what measuring says either, as far as I can tell. But just think, if we thought we had overcrowding before, anybody know how many houses we actually have in Santee? I forgot.
20, well, doors. You talking about doors, or you're talking about, so doors, it's a little over 22,000.
Yeah, about 22,000 homes. Let's say if there's...
Including apartments and...
Yeah, well, if we take it, well, let's just take out the apartment stuff because they're not going to put any more on those properties. But just think, if you had one house to each one of those, we know it's not going to happen, but just think it could. I mean, and this is something that you talked about at one time also. Just add another house to each property. We're already well over our capacity here. But that's a law that's been proposed. It's been referred back to the Housing and Community Development Committee on June 23rd. We're waiting to hear what's going to happen on that. Sorry guys, takes so long, but.
Take your time.
There's AB Assembly Bill 215 by Chu. Housing element, regional housing needs, relative process, determination. And that's what we're talking about here tonight, pretty much, aren't we, Melanie?
The regional housing needs assessment is an important part of the housing element, correct?
Okay. Well, you know, it used to be years ago, there were 8 years for that, each one of those cycles. You identify the property, and then if you can, you build on it. If you didn't, then maybe it went in the next cycle. Now they're saying that you identify it, you have to build on it. And now this bill says, midway, we're going to do a check on you. Midway, if you haven't built on at least half of what you said you are, we're going to fine you. State government has created an authority for the Attorney General to enforce the violation of the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. So we're going to get them one way or another, I guess, or we're going to have to pay fines for it. So what can we do? I don't know what the answer is, but what I would like this council to do before I hear your comments, and maybe I'll say this and make an ask, and you can make your comments because it might fit in what I'm asking. What I'm going to ask is that the city manager and the city attorney do some research, because we're talking about this being an urgency, a crisis. Expedite, urgency, is find out if there is an urgency ordinance that we can create that will help us to streamline this process and approve projects that come before us, so it doesn't take years and years and years. So that's my ask of staff. So now what I'll do is I'll go to council comments and see if you have any other ideas on that or questions on that, or do you want to talk about any more of these crazy laws coming out of the state of California? See if I have nobody on the list. Nobody wants to talk. Mr. McNellis.
You mentioned homelessness and how it was the state of California talked about homelessness is caused because of lack of housing. And Prager University actually did a study on homelessness, and it's related to affordable housing. 2/3 of homeless individuals were homeless due to drug use and or mental health, or both. It is not the cost of a home. How do you make a home affordable? You produce a housing stock that meets the needs of your community, meaning that you produce a housing stock of all types of homes, apartments, condos, townhomes, single-family detached homes with, now we've learned after COVID, with office space. Now, because of the lack of land available, because of the cost of building in California, I think it's even more important that we have homes with granny flats and or ADUs built into them right out the gate, so that multi-generational housing is available, which will also help us with affordability for the younger generation and some of our older generation to stay with family, but still be autonomous in their own domicile. That's how we get there, and whatever way possible for us to make that possible for more affordable for builders to build, I think that's what we need to do. All these new ordinances and initiatives that get passed by those that are not in the industry, that don't understand all the information that's provided. I mean, let's face it, when us sitting up here, we're blessed or cursed, I'm not sure which, with every bit of information about every development. I mean, we get this much information on every development, every possible development, everything, and what that's going to do, and who's required to do what, and why they're required to do it, and what are we making them do to do that, to do this, to do the other thing, and how are they going to make it better after they're there than it was before they got there, and how do we hold them accountable, and how do we hold their feet to the fire, and we have all this information that lets us know and feel comfortable and gives us the warm and fuzzies, but the average voter gets a leaflet, if that, in the mail and says, do or do not vote for this. How do you make a rational, educated decision based on a leaflet? It's frankly impossible, and on top of that, it's almost impossible for the average person to take the time to find the real information, to do the research, to get all the kind of information that we are provided because of where we sit. Nor do they have the time, energy, or desire necessarily to go through all the information that we have to go through, because they've got lives unlike us. So that being said, yeah, and I mean, an urgency ordinance is, I mean, if we can figure out a way to make that happen, I'm 100% in support of your recommendation, Mr. Mayor, as I usually am. But we really need to do something, because this is where it's impossible. It's frankly, it's impossible for us to meet the requirements of the state, and the desires of the vocal, I think the vocal minority in the city that want absolutely no development. And those that many of those that follow in that simply just don't have the adequate information to make that decision. And I wish we could provide it all in a very easy manner, but it's just frankly not possible. It's just not possible. Unless they all showed up to every one of these meetings and participated in every one of the workshops and listened to all the development and all of our department heads that vet these things out, and our legal department that makes sure that we have the tools necessary to make sure that these things get accomplished. So whatever you guys can come up with to help us make this a reality would be great, and almost more importantly, bring more control back to the local municipality. I mean, I get it. If somebody doesn't like the fact that I approved something or didn't approve something, that's understandable. And you don't have to vote for me next time. And that's how you exercise your right, by voting for or against somebody for what they have done and what they say they're going to do, and whether they follow through or don't follow through. That is where the citizens in our districts and our communities have their voice, is at that ballot box, not in development services ballot box. And I think it needs to come back to local control. So, thank you.
By the way, Melanie, I'm not trying to hijack this with a different idea. The work that you and your team have done, Veronica's done, excellent. I mean, as I read through it, that's why I began to become perplexed with this concept and this idea that we need to do something, because otherwise the hard work that you do may go, might not be able to get to most of it or any of it. Why waste the time and money on staff if we can't implement the projects and the vision that we've asked you to come up with? So that's why I'm making a big deal. But I didn't want to completely ignore the housing element request.
No,
I do like it.
We still will have to vote on that tonight. I just agree with your assessment.
Thanks. Anybody else?
Look at your screen.
Oh, you guys finally put something on it. Mr. Trotter.
Well, Mr. Mayor, as usual, I was going to say the same thing about staff, so I want to show the public. This is the binder we got this week. All 5 of us up here, you guys. I spent, I'm not kidding you, probably 10 hours of my weekend reading through this binder, and the largest section in here is the housing element. It is, I don't know, 2.5 inches thick, something like that. So it's crazy that how much information in here. Huh?
Double-sided.
Double-sided, yeah, that's true too. Both. But I wanted to actually commend staff to start. Is the amount of information that's in here, the stats, the graphs, the pie charts, the bars. There's so much information in here, guys, that our Vice Mayor Pinellas alluded to, that unfortunately the general public doesn't get privy to and get to see all this information that we do to be able to make an educated decision based upon the facts and the information. So one of the things that, there's several in here, and I just want to kind of show, there's a population growth here in the city of Santee table here, right at the beginning, that shows in 2020 our population was 53,090 people. In 2010, it was 53,413 people. That's in 10 years, we grew less than 400 people in the city of Santee.
That's not homes.
No, that's people. Less than 400 in 10 years that we grew as a population. And then from 2010 to 2020 shows us at 57,999. So just about 58,000. That's less than 5,000. So that's less than a 10% growth in 10 years. It's actually 8.6%. And the reason why I bring that up is, again, to show you that our growth in our population has not been what the narrative is out there. Everybody's saying that we're growing like crazy and that we're building so many houses and our population's out of control. There's other reasons that people feel that way with the highways and the different infrastructure changes and things of that nature. But here's the real facts. And that's what the people, unfortunately, are not getting to see all the time. One of the items, Melanie, in your Veronica's presentation, I guess, is item number 10, by right approval. So I don't know if everybody really understands what that means, you guys. And this also goes with the caveat of the 20% of affordable housing within that. But a by right approval means that that land developer or that owner of that property gets to build that property as long as they meet the conditions, and it's a ministerial permit. They don't have to have any approval from the community to do that. There's, or the council or anybody else. The state is telling them that they can do that as long as they meet these guidelines. And we, as a council, the city, the staff, the community, the individuals, don't have any say in that. And that's what the mayor's talking about there. That scares the heck out of us when we lose our own control. We lose the control to be able to choose how we want our community to look for the next 5 years, 10 years, going forward. Melanie, I was going to ask you a question that's it's related. I know it's a little off this housing thing, but I know with the ADUs, we talked about previously, and I'd like to relook at that at some point, is getting some pre-approved plans for the ADUs going forward, where we make it easier for our residents to be able to get the ADUs, on there, which will give you more housing stock ultimately, right? In there.
There's nothing, we do not send people away with their plans, pre-approved or not. So there are pre-approved plans already on the market.
Right.
The county's got tons of choices. So it's really up to a property owner to see which one works for them and bring it in, and then we sign off.
Well, Marlene, maybe we could look at that again after this. This is unrelated, but I just think another way that we can make it easier for our residents to add an ADU to their home, whatever it looks like, which increases our housing stock, which is part of the housing element itself. And homelessness. I just wanted to thank Sam and his staff and Public Works for all the hard work they've done. I don't know if everybody's even seen all the hard work they've done down there in the parks and the river trails, and the down the river itself. This is all unrelated to that, but I just wanted to commend Public Works for the amazing work they've been doing lately. There's so much information. I appreciate you bringing that information up to Mr. Mayor and commending the staff, because I spent a lot of time on this over the weekend, and a lot of it it's a refresher, to an extent, because we've heard it over and over in different aspects over the last couple of years and over time. But there's so much stats in here and so much information of why we need housing, why the state is mandating that we need housing, And if we don't do something within our control, it's going to happen to us one way or another. And I know Ron's been, saying that for years, the mayor, Rob, you guys all been saying it for a long time. And I don't think everybody quite understands that we are losing our positive control if we allow the state to keep dictating what happens to us. We have to have a chance to at least write our own narrative going forward in the 2020s here. So, absolutely support, obviously some of those comments, John. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have Lauren Koval.
Am I on?
You're on.
All right. So thank you for your comments. Can you not hear? Hello? Okay. Hello. Don't give me a mic. So anyway, that is why we all signed that ordinance earlier. I guess it was, what year is it? 2020. But we want local control. We saw this coming. We saw the writing on the wall. We knew that there were these laws working their way through, and with a supermajority in Sacramento, working your way through the legislation can take 10 days now instead of months and months and months, because there's no committees to go through anymore. So it's a grave concern to all of us in Santee. And I also appreciate the comments that Linda Marikel made earlier about the move up and move down inventory that we do not have in the city of Santee. I have 2 daughters that, would like to move up, I guess. They don't live at home, but, they don't, and I'm not saying just in Santee, it exists all around. This is countywide, statewide. And it's very expensive for young people, our young talented workforce can't afford to live anywhere here, in San Diego County especially. And so they're moving in droves, and so you create these 2 extremes of people that have a home and were lucky enough to buy a home before prices exploded, and Rob can speak about this, but our mutual friend Brian Brady posted a post on, the cost increase for a home in San Diego County. It went from, I think in 2012, average home price was $400,000, now it's $800,000. That's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Who can afford that? I have a pretty nice paying job. I have 2 jobs. I can't afford that. I wouldn't be able to afford a new home. It's just ridiculous. So there's that. And then the move down. I think anybody that comes before the city council and says, you can't approve housing in Santee, and they have a single family home and they don't have a family, should move out of that family and free up the inventory. That's what I think. If you're going to, put your money where your mouth is, if you're going to make that statement to us, because let a family live in your home if you're going to say that to us. Okay, now I have some questions for you. Can somebody bring back the slide? It said program 10 slide. Sorry.
Veronica, can you you control the PowerPoint? Can you bring back program 10?
Sure.
Thank you.
I don't know that I have any questions. I just really want to look at it a little bit longer. It actually, the map, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Just give us a minute.
While we're looking at that, Laura, to your point, average 1,300 square foot house right now in Santee, built in the 60s, 700,000 plus.
Ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. What's the definition of generational housing?
Multi-generational housing means housing that supports typically a larger family that's got grandma and kids. So
is that why they're asking for large units for large households? Okay.
Yeah, so state is requesting that we encourage 3-bedroom units where we can, and larger units for the larger families. So, but the city of Santee, it's interesting because over the years, for those who've been on council for a relatively long time, we have always strived to provide a bedroom mix within multifamily that ranges from we're seeing more of the one bedroom, but 2 and 3. So most of our multifamily now, presented by City Ventures, for instance, have 3 bedrooms. So it's not, but for the larger homes that we have recently approved, like the homes on Braverman, that would meet that.
It's just so interesting to me because the state's saying, build this now.
Yes.
And 3 years ago, you're hearing, stack and pack, small, build it as high as you can go, but make it a small footprint.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting, yeah.
I just find it so fascinating because we approved a project that fits these needs and we can't build it yet. And then also the work-live housing. So I guess that's the same concept as, or...
Veronica, could you, do you have any more background on this interest in live work?
Yeah, I think essentially because of the pandemic, they're seeing trends of a lot of people now have the ability to work from home, and telecommuting is certainly a trend, has always been a trend, and the pandemic just accelerated that. And so they're looking for jurisdictions to, when you design housing and when you encourage the developers to design housing that provide for that type of arrangement, it can be, there's no legal definition to it, and so we've seen people with housing that have dedicated areas such as like an office, or in some communities what we're starting to see mixed use. The non-residential portion of it is actually co-working arrangement. And so that's also another type of live work housing.
Co-working.
What is co-working arrangement?
Co-working is, those are pretty popular. There is actually a company called CoWork. They provide flexible desk space and office utilities like printing, internet, and phone, and so
like
you
executive
actually
suites.
It's almost communal working space, and you would have I'll give you a typical model. It's like you subscribe to it, and you have the ability to use a desk, or you rent an office, but you share the printing and utility telephone, you share the conference room, you get to use the conference room, like reserve the conference rooms for a certain number of hours based on your rent. So it's a lot of shared amenities as offices. So you don't necessarily have a fixed office, you have the ability to use an office. And that type of arrangement is getting very popular right now. So we're seeing some condominiums and apartments now, or mixed-use development, instead of the required retail space or office space, to use the co-working space as that requirement. And a lot of communities are re-looking at the definition of mixed use because of how they anticipate the need for office space is going to change.
All right, thank you. And I don't have any more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Ron?
I'm going to be pretty quick. To go off of Rob's point, by the way, I did a printout of the housing prices. In 2019, they were $500,000 in Santee, and now there's about $740,000. So affordable housing in Santee is becoming almost impossible.
Isn't that an oxymoron?
Yes.
Affordable.
Oh, yes, of course, because nobody wants to build them anyway. The SB 10 is what really kind of bugs me. I sent it to the city attorney and city manager, and it says that basically SB 9, SB 10, the two of them, is they're going to be able to allow you to put a 14-unit building anywhere. And the first comment in there as well, it's by choice of council. And that right there tells me, look out, because next year it ain't by choice of council. So we have to do these things. I've been saying it, John, we've all been saying it for, as many years.
they're going to build wherever they want. So either we build these things as we want, or they're going to build them. And we have, if you go to that slide, program 10, we've picked some places for affordable housing and just housing in general. Problem is we want to, when we want to move them, we're picking properties we probably don't even own, and that's all. The only thing in the housing that really bothers me is like, it's one time we had the drive-in in there. I noticed they're not in there this time, but the drive-in it's like we don't own that property. You can mark it as affordable housing, but they may have a different idea on it. And I don't know if we're having to build where we're saying we're having to build. It's not really our choice to tell people, oh, by the way, next week you're affordable housing. So.
Really?
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Early on in the process when we were presenting the inventory, we actually spoke with the property owners, and the sites that are on this slide are likely, I can say at the time, the property owners were very interested.
Okay.
So these are not unrealistic sites.
Okay, I appreciate that.
But the drive-in, yes, perhaps.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, anyway, when we do these things, I mean, the problem we're having with Town Center right now, which is 17 and 18, is we don't necessarily want to put affordable housing there, and it's classified as affordable housing.
It's classified as housing, by right housing. If the developer of the property includes 20% affordable, that streamlines it.
Right.
And that gives them by right.
Right.
Opportunities.
That's just my concern, is we have to be really careful with. My biggest concern is kind of with the SB 10 part, is again, today, oh yeah, it's your choice, don't worry about it. Next week, next month, next year, 2 years from now, it's like, nope, we're going to do it, that's the way it's going to be, and have a nice day. And that's what's coming down here. These granny flats, I can't think of it right now, are the same thing. Before it was like, oh, well, we don't really want granny flats. And, everybody wanted to buy, 2 units on a house so they could rent one out and live in it. Well, now it's almost mandatory. And so what you see coming out of Sacramento today is law tomorrow. There's no doubt about it. So even though it's your choice today, tomorrow it's law. So we're going to have to build some of these houses. I would rather build them where we want them versus where they're going to tell us. And that's exactly what you're seeing on this map, is at least we have a choice here, we need to deal with it right away. So
the problem is we don't have the choice. We don't build houses,
Correct.
as the mayor alluded to earlier.
Right.
The city of Santee doesn't build houses. We can't force a developer to come in and say, you will build
affordable housing
or any type of housing stock.
Right, and that's why those
commercial stock, for that matter.
That's why those properties sit vacant right now, because they don't want to build affordable housing, right?
Unfortunately, what it's creating, though, is the scenario where if a home builder does come into the city, we say, you will build that there. If not, you're not a home builder in our city. Well, that may mean that they're not a home builder anywhere else, because the state law is going to be the same everywhere.
At some point.
Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. O'Connor, but the BIA is not going to be very happy about something like that, being told you have to build what we tell you to build and nothing else but that. So, I'm guessing that. So, okay. Have we beat that up enough?
Yeah, I will motion to support staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, motion by McDowell, second by Koval. And you don't need to have what I suggested in there as a part of that, do you?
I would appreciate you including that, if the motion maker would be willing to do that, just to make sure that the direction's clear.
I will amend my motion to support staff recommendations for item number 10 with the addition of
bring forward
some sort of urgency ordinance that would allow us the ability to
streamline the permitting process.
And I will still second.
Fair enough.
Okay, great, thanks. I have a motion, I have a second. I prepare to vote, please vote, and please lock in your vote. Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
There's a big question. Does that change your resolution that was sent to this big?
That takes us to item number 11, which is a public hearing for the fiscal year 2021-2022 Santee Landscape Maintenance District Annual Levy of Assessments. And Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members.
Tim, can you hold on a second? This is,
Well, we do have to have a hearing on this because it's a levy of assessments, right?
You do, but you can do that pretty quickly if you wish to.
Okay, as quickly as we, okay, thank you.
Tim, are you done with the hearing?
I would recommend that you open and close the public hearing and adopt the resolution levying the assessments for fiscal year 21-22 for the Santee Landscape Maintenance District.
motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second. Motion by McMillan, second by Trotter. Please vote. Please lock in that vote. Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously.
I mean, Mr. Mayor, we should probably throw out there that this is something we have to do every year. It's,
Thank you very much. Okay, before we get on to item number 12, just for those who might be wondering why we kind of rush through that, this is a very common thing we do, have to do it every year. Doesn't really change anything, and we just have to do it as a housekeeping type of, procedure. Will that suffice?
And for each of these items, this is actually your third step in a process. So you've seen these items twice before already.
Okay, great, thanks. Takes item number 12, public hearing for the fiscal year 2021-22 Town Center Landscape Maintenance District Annual Levy of Assessments.
Again, we would ask the City Council to conduct and close the public hearing and adopt the resolution authorizing the levy assessments.
same thing.
A motion by McNellis.
Oh, yes, yeah, I didn't get it out.
Second by Koval. Please prepare to vote. Please vote and lock in your votes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. That takes us to item number 13, which is a public hearing for the fiscal year 2021-22 Santee Roadway Lighting District Annual Levy of Assessments.
And staff would request that you conduct and close the public hearing and adopt the resolution authorizing the levy of assessments for the Santee Roadway Lighting District.
Go ahead, Rob. Motion to approve staff recommendation. Second.
Motion by McNellis, second by Hall. Please prepare to vote. Please vote. And please lock in your votes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. That takes us to new business. Do that.
Councilmember Koval's property is adjacent to one of the recommended projects, and so therefore needs recused.
Okay. In case you didn't hear that, Councilmember Koval lives near one of the projects, so has to recuse herself from this. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 14 is receive report on the City of Santee local roadway safety plan. Accept said plan and approve a determination that the plan is exempt from the environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. Melanie?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Minji May, our principal engineer in charge of the traffic division, will give a PowerPoint presentation. KOA has completed the report, and Minji is going to present the highlights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and the City Council members, I'm here to present you the Santee Local Roadway Safety Plan. First, I'll give you some background. US DOT provides funding for roadway safety improvements through the Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP. It is a competitive grant program. Santee has utilized HSIP grants in the amount of $2.5 million in the last 10 plus years and has seen significant reduction in collisions, which I will elaborate in the next slide. Caltrans requires that starting in 2022, an HSIP applicant must have a local roadway safety plan to be eligible for the grant. And Santee has received a $64,800 Caltrans grant in 2019 to develop a local roadway safety plan. Here I want to show you the safety trend in Santee since we implemented HSIP program since 2009. In 2009, Santee had a 176 injury collisions. And by 2020, there was 73. So that's a 59% reduction in that time period. The State Office of Traffic Safety also compiles traffic data and they provide annual ranking of all the cities in categories by population. Santee falls in the category of 50 to 100,000 population, and there were 104 cities in this category in 2009. At that time, Santee ranked 43rd out of 104 cities. I want to explain that. In the OTS ranking, the lower ranking number means bad, meaning number one is the worst, meaning number one has the highest number of collisions. So the higher number, the better. So in 2009, Santee was ranked 43rd out of 104 cities of similar sizes. So that's a place that's about just above, a little below average actually. But by 2018, which is the latest data available, Santee ranks at the very bottom, meaning Santee ranks 102 out of 102 cities of similar size, meaning we're the safest city in terms of traffic for the year of 2018 in the entire state of California. Of course, there are multiple factors that contributed to these reductions, including engineering, enforcement, and also probably the reduction in traffic since the ISR 52 connection was connected. So the local roadway safety plan is to examine a 5-year collision history and identify high crash locations citywide. We've also identified countermeasures that meet Caltrans HSIP requirements. Oh, sorry, I think I missed the slide. That meets Caltrans HSIP requirements, which is minimum project size of $100,000, and it has to have a minimum benefit to cost ratio of 3.5 or higher. So that will place the city to be eligible for future HSIP grants. I want to explain the definition of equivalent property damage only. In order to quantify the damage caused by traffic collisions in dollar amounts, Caltrans Safety Manual uses the equivalent property damage only, EPDO scores. EPDO scores are calculated based on the number and the severity of collisions for a location. Caltrans Safety Manual assigns a cost for each category of collision based on historical data that account for factors such as pain and suffering, lost wages and productivity, insurance costs, and so forth. For example, a fatality is estimated to cost the society about $7.2 million. Then there are costs for the other categories as well, as shown on the slide. Using these numbers, the EPDO scores were calculated for the top 10 intersections and the top 10 roadway segments with the highest EPDO scores in the city. So this list shows you the top 10 intersections in the city with the highest EPDO scores. Number one is Mission Gorge and the Cuyamaca intersection. That one, you know, that's the busiest intersection in the city, so no surprise there. But what I want to bring your attention to this is that on this top 10 list, there are 4 intersections on Mission Gorge, which is also the busiest arterial in the city. Also note that this list does not include any Caltrans ramp intersections, because we have 7 of those in the city. Although we do have data for them, we do actually, in our annual review, we do review those, but because they're not in our jurisdiction, we can't really do anything, so that's why they're not included on this list. And here's the top 10 roadway segments. Basically, that's mostly, they're all really on major arterials. You can see the top 1 and 2 both have over $7 million damages because those both had a fatality in those time periods.
Can I cut in there real quick? Of the number 1, the Mission Gorge, and well, now it's Mass, but Mission Gorge and Cuyamaca, and the Mission Gorge and Buena Vista, were any of those the trolley-related ones?
There are some, yeah. Yes. And the analysis also identified the top 5 collision factors that cause traffic collisions. So they are listed by the number of percentage. The highest one is unsafe speed, followed by improper turning, auto right-of-way violation, driving under the influence, and a traffic signal and signs, meaning basically people running traffic lights.
I have a quick question for you on that, because driving under the influence, from my understanding, wouldn't be a cause of a traffic collision, but it would be an associated factor, because usually somebody who's driving under influence will violate the law, like ignore traffic signals or signs, or they'll do the improper turning or those things. So how is it that we're melding that in here? Not that it's a good thing, because we should be looking at that, but that's an associated factor in my opinion.
Right, but what I've seen in the collision reports, they are actually listed as the prime factor, and then that's how we draw the data from the collision reports and compile them this way.
Okay, thank you. Captain, is that the way they're doing that now? Is the DUI is the primary cause of collision?
Have somebody in the car that tells you that they ran a red light, or a witness that said that some of these may be that they just don't know, or it may be a single collision, or it might be a combination of things, but they will probably use that as a factor in some of them, yeah.
All right. So
with this analysis, projects and countermeasures were identified and developed projects for future HSIP grant applications. So the first one here is the project will provide advanced dilemma zone detection for the following intersection. I'll explain in the next slide what the dilemma zone detection is. So also worth noticing that on this list also 5 intersections are on Mission Court Road. So this slide I'll show you what the dilemma zone is. Hopefully, I know this thing can get pretty technical, but hopefully I can do a halfway decent job explaining that. Dilemma zone is when the driver approach a traffic light, and when the light is green, no problem, people they just kept going. But when the light turns yellow, if you look at these three cars on this diagram, the green car is close enough to cross an intersection, no problem. The red car is far enough to safely stop. But for drivers in that yellow car zone, some people may choose to stop, some may choose to go. So that's a dilemma zone. Because I can tell, based on my own experience, sometimes when I drive in, I know when the light turns yellow, I know I have time to clear, but in order to prevent people from rear-ending me, I chose to keep on going. But I couldn't run the light if I do that. So that's what we call a dilemma zone. So this dilemma zone detection will provide additional detection on upstream approaching the intersection to tell the traffic signal there are more cars coming, don't turn yellow yet, to allow the cars pass. So to minimize people being stuck in this dilemma zone. So that's the idea. So that will help reduce collision. So next projects to improve signal timing, including adaptive signal timing on Mission Court Road. This is basically the entire Mission Court Road from Frontier Drive to Carlton Hills Boulevard. And I want to also remind you that there are other projects in the plan that are not presented here because they're either too small to qualify for Caltrans projects, the HSIP grants, or they don't have high enough benefit to cost ratio, meaning their benefit to cost ratio is less than 3.5. So they're not listed, but they are included in the plan anyway, just in case in the future we may things may change, they may still allow us to apply for the grant, so they're not precluded from applying for the grant. So that is highlight of the local roadway safety plan. And the staff recommended the council approve a determination that the Santee local roadway safety plan is exempt from CEQA review and accept the City of Santee local roadway safety plan as presented. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Speaker slips?
No speakers.
Great, council?
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
All right. Second. I have a motion by McNellis, second by Trotter. Please prepare to vote. Please vote. And please lock in your vote. Good job. Thank you.
Motion carries with 4 ayes. Councilmember Koval is abstaining.
Would that be a recusal or abstention?
She's recusing.
Thank you.
For the record.
For the record, we need to have it accurate. All right, that takes us to item number 15, which is also new business, and that's the American Rescue Plan Act funding. Deb.
Good evening, good evening again, Mayor and council members. This evening we'd like to engage you in a conversation regarding the American Rescue Plan Act funding that the City of Santee has received and will be receiving an additional allocation of in about another year. So the American Rescue Plan Act funding is also known as ARPA. I'll be referring to it as ARPA. What is it? This is COVID relief money being received from the federal government. It's being sent out to support the response to the COVID-19 emergency and its economic impacts. It was signed into law back in March of 2021, and it includes $350 billion nationwide in direct payments to states, local entities, territorial governments, and tribal governments as well. The interim final rule is a document that has been published by the U.S. Department of the Treasury. It provides guidelines for the use of the ARPA funds. It's an interesting title. They call it the interim final rule. It truly is interim. It's more interim than final. Additional guidance continues to come out from Treasury. There's actually a public comment period that closes at the end of this week. So what we expect to happen, Treasury will be releasing additional guidance, hopefully quasi-final guidance here in the upcoming month or so. The City of Santee will be receiving a direct allocation totaling $7.3 million plus in ARPA funds. The first 50% chunk of this was received back on May 20th, just over $3.6 million, and then another $3.6 million plus will be received in approximately 1 year. So what may the funds be used for? There are 6 higher level categories that have been identified in the legislation and the supporting documents that we have. They're included in attachment 2 to the agenda materials. There are 6 higher level categories, and then within those categories there's additional specific categories that have been identified by Treasury. There are 66 categories in total, so any funding allocations that the City Council would like to make has to fit into one of those 66 categories, and we'll be reporting out on that starting next month and on a quarterly basis over the next several years. So the 6 major categories are supporting public health expenditures, addressing negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency, aiding communities and populations that were hardest hit by the crisis, providing premium pay for essential workers, investing in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, and replacing lost public sector revenue. In addition to these categories, there is a provision for administrative expenses as well. So starting with the supporting public health expenditures, this is an area where staff has identified several categories that we feel we can utilize this funding for: personal protective equipment, communications regarding public health matters, and the cost for public safety personnel responding to COVID-19. These are areas where we've utilized federal CARES Act monies throughout the pandemic. We're looking at those needs being drastically lower than what they've been over the past year. But we're expecting anywhere in the range of $50,000 to $100,000 over the next couple of years would be a reasonable amount that the city would require that we could utilize ARP money for these purposes.
Tim, real quick question. Is this a use it or lose it scenario?
It must be used or lost, and it must be used very specifically for the categories and within the parameters. The guidelines are actually, in some regards, much tighter than the CARES Act monies. In other ways, there's some flexibility that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. Another area is addressing negative economic impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. And here are some areas that we've identified that there are opportunities to utilize this funding. I think the city manager, Marlene Best, would like to possibly weigh in at this time.
Sure, thanks, Tim. Council members, just a couple of comments on 2 or 3 of the slides that you're going to see. This is the first one that we wanted to bring to your attention specifically. The city, through CARES Act, has done a variety of grants to assist households and small businesses. It would be a recommendation that, yes, we could continue to fund the ones that were most successful. We could do that again. The aid to tourism, travel, or hospitality industries, putting on some creative hats. You heard about the Brews and Bites proposal that CSD is working on for October. And it could be that we would, instead of asking restaurants and bars and breweries to donate their product and their time for that event, we help fund them, because right now they don't have a lot of money to donate. They don't have a lot of extra staff to donate. So those are some of the creative opportunities that we could use to assist us if council wanted to allocate dollars there. The aid to other impacted industries could be things like arts and entertainment and music. All of those industries were shut down completely, so there could be additional opportunities for us to look at adding entertainment, perhaps at the amphitheater at Trolley Square. Smaller groups, not those that we would bring to our main concert stage, but giving smaller entities a chance to get some money, a little bit of money, and get their name out there and get advertised. Those are the types of things that we could look at. Additionally, we could look at if we can find a way to qualify it, and Tim's going to make sure that I stay between the lines, but looking at how we encourage smaller businesses to have a space in Santee to actually open, and look at smaller space development that we could encourage and what we could fund to try to get us through that point. As you know, we have a plan for the entertainment district that we'll be working on. Maybe there's some options there. And Tim can talk about some of the other items here. The last one I'll highlight is that the recreation coordinator positions, because you can rehire public sector staff. We lost those 2 positions. Council just agreed to provide those in the budget for this current year. So this isn't about whether or not those positions exist, but this could be an opportunity for us to offset the cost of those positions for a year with these dollars. Again, these are all ideas that we want you to think about, and we'll be asking for finite plans at the next city council meeting, but these are just some ideas off of this particular slide. Tim may have other items on this slide he wants to highlight.
How about like buying a billboard sign?
All of those could be, if we're doing them specifically for...
We advertise all the businesses.
Absolutely. If it's for a COVID economically impacted industry, that's the only thing, is we have to be able to show that it ties back to, quote, COVID impacts.
Okay.
And I'm pretty liberal on that, but again, Tim will make sure I stay between the lines.
Something to keep in mind.
Let me just point out one other item on this slide, the aid to nonprofit organizations. Just a reminder that through the capital improvement program process, there was a project in there for supporting the YMCA for upgrades to the aquatic center. We do see that possibly fitting within this category. $321,900 was included in the capital improvement program to support that project, pay a portion of the cost for that. And the thought here is that the YMCA was impacted by lost revenue during the past 12-month period. And so this would be an opportunity to support them to make some much needed upgrades to the aquatic center.
Yeah.
Next would be services to yes, sir.
I've got to interrupt for a second. Not that I don't like the aquatic center, they just went through a major renovation though, so what would they be renovating? Or is this, because I don't want there to be an idea that we're just reimbursing them for, 2 years ago that they did a major renovation.
Mayor, I can answer that. The Aquatic Center and the YMCA is now 20 years old. All mechanical systems at the Aquatic Center need to be upgraded and replaced at this time. Typically that would be on their dime, but they've had a huge revenue loss the last year and a half.
Yeah, okay. Before I would approve anything on that though, I'd want to see that list of mechanical stuff, make sure that it wasn't replaced in the last renovation, which was only 2 years ago, or actually less than that almost.
Yes, Ms. Ray, at this point, staff discussions with the Y, this is all different equipment than what was renovated in the last couple of years. So it's an entirely different source of funds. we would not be paying for, we're not proposing to pay for those upgrades because that's the WISE issue, but we could offset their revenue losses as a nonprofit, their membership fees, et cetera, that they did not get. We can fund that and then require them per their contract to make those improvements to the aquatics facility. If by chance those improvements cost more than the money the city would be giving them as a support method, that still is on them. We're only dealing with their membership offsets.
Let's call it what it is. If it's, reimburse them or help them with losses from revenue, I don't think we should commingle it with the idea that they're going to be, using, because once you give them money back because of revenue loss, they can do whatever they want with it, in my opinion.
And if they do, we still have a contract they must update.
I agree.
So we're fine there. We
Okay.
understand, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next category would be providing services to disproportionately impacted communities. Specifically, the legislation and the guidance does reference the impacts suffered by homeless individuals during the pandemic and the impacts that they experienced. This would be an opportunity to carve out resources for the city to participate in regional homeless shelter and other supportive services efforts. Again, I think Marlene may want to weigh in on this one.
Just for the community's knowledge and a reminder, we had a lot of discussion about homeless during the housing element this evening, and the city has been participating with the other East County cities in trying to look at the establishment of an additional homeless shelter. There's the potential of two, one site in Lakeside, one site in Spring Valley, because those are currently the highest locations of homeless populations. And if we could get that to move forward with the cities providing some money, it would be as leveraging for the regional continuum of care. The regional task force on the homeless has a lot of dollars available to it, but we're not getting them coming to East County. If we have to pool our efforts to push for that to come, we've talked to our county supervisor, he's very supportive of that, and it would be a way to get services here in the East County. As a reminder for the public, I know the council's aware of this, if we can have more shelter services, we can ask for and mandate effectively that our sheriff's department has the authority then to move some of our homeless individuals out of the riverbed and off of our street corners, because there could be a real-time inventory of how many beds are available to each city in East County. El Cajon's got 4 tonight, go ahead and bring those folks in. Santee's got 6, take those. Lemon Grove's got 3. You got 12 people, you can only bring in 3. Those are the kinds of discussions we've been having, looking at that as potentially a contract operated facility, not operated by the cities, but under a contract to someone who knows how to do that, a firm who knows how to do that, which might include wraparound services and housing navigation services for long-term support.
So would we have our own dedicated beds for
Yes,
this is
sir.
Santee's, and you have 4, and El Cajon has 6, but El Cajon's only has 5 people that want to go, so now we can use theirs or vice versa.
All of those would be,
I just don't want them all coming from Spring Valley and all of a sudden we're looking around going, oh, wait a minute.
yeah, no, sir. The concept is one that's being mirrored off of something that's been very successful in Orange County. And so we would make sure that we have our own dedicated beds. If for whatever reason we said, okay, for the next 3 nights, we really don't need them, Sheriff's Department says, yeah, we're not finding anybody, and some other agency needs them, that would be something that have to be worked out, but it'd be operated through some sort of a JPA with the contract operators. All of those details would be worked out in the future. The City Council did ask for a priority to be dealing with homeless in our city and provide additional services to them. This is a way that our general fund does not need to provide those dollars, so we could look at the possibility of using ARPA monies for that service.
I like the idea of $2 million going for that. That's
Yeah, but one of the benefits that, in my opinion, one of the benefits using that money now is that if we can address the problem now, we won't have perhaps as large a problem in the future using general fund money to address it.
Actually, I think more importantly that maybe the county won't be using our local hotels and turning them into homeless shelters, and then,
Good point.
Surprising us.
yeah.
Well, both of the locations you mentioned, Spring Valley and Lakeside, are in the county of San Diego. And you mentioned also the cities, and I'm thinking you're referring to La Mesa, El Cajon, Santee as the East County cities, right?
And Lemon Grove, sir. Poway is also potentially interested in
I
providing.
was not in East County, I'm sorry.
Well, that may be, but they have a very low population of homeless, and they have lots of money. So if we can get them to give us some dollars, I'm not too proud to accept some.
But the county is going to contribute to this also, as being a facility in the county area?
At this point, we would not propose to move forward. The cities independently cannot do it by ourselves. If we don't get assistance from the Regional Task Force on the Homeless, we can't make it happen.
So we designate $2 million, and then the whole thing falls apart. How long do we have before it becomes, we lose it?
So we need to be able to commit or obligate the monies by the end of December of 2024. Then we have until the end of December of 2026 to actually spend the money, but it does have to be committed or obligated by the end of December 2024.
So we could probably buy a hotel if we needed to.
Not for $2 million.
$2 million, yeah, you know what I mean.
We get 8 bedrooms.
Okay, so then the next category is infrastructure. We talked about this again during the capital improvement program process. There are certain types of infrastructure for which this money can be used, but they only include water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So there are projects included in the adopted capital improvement program budget: corrugated metal pipe storm drain replacement, the master drainage study update, storm drain trash diversion. And then in regards to broadband, there are a couple of projects that are included in the capital improvement program there as well. Broadband's an interesting area. The guidance there has got some fairly strict requirements currently. We know the National League of Cities in particular has requested Treasury to pull back on some of those requirements. So we do expect some revised guidance regarding the use of the money for broadband projects to come out here with the RISE guidelines.
Council, I would add to that if the guidance comes out where we don't feel it would be beneficial to the city any further to proceed down this road, city council members have the ability at any time during this process, we can come back to you and say, yeah, let's reallocate those dollars to something else.
Well, I see this as a guideline more than anything else, right?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah.
Any funding allocations you make, direction you give either this evening, next month, or whenever, they can always be reallocated by your action.
Yeah,
so we're not locked in.
It's not creating a restriction.
Correct. As long as we stay within the parameters of the overall allowable uses, the money can be shifted from here to there based on changes in priorities. And if the guidance changes and we need to shift course, then you've got complete flexibility to do that. So the next category is replacing lost public sector revenue. It's kind of an interesting category. If you think about it, this legislation was issued with funding that's being pushed out to cities, tribal governments, states. So a city in California and a tribal government in Rhode Island have very different revenue sources, very different structures, very different needs. So the legislation and the guidance has got standard language that applies across the board. It makes this an interesting area, so we're doing our best to work with the guidance and the language that currently exists. There have been some tools put out both at the national and the state level to try to tailor the best read on what we can do here based on California revenues and life as we know it. Based on that, the legislation does a 3-year look back, pre-pandemic look back, identifies a rate of growth in revenues, a historical rate of growth, allows us then to project that going forward during the pandemic period and beyond. And anything short of that rate of growth, we can claim as lost revenue. Even though our revenues are growing, it still qualifies as lost revenue. So calendar year 2020, for example, so the look is done on a calendar year basis, and we've run the numbers for calendar year 2020, and we're coming up with a lost revenue calculation in excess of $1.4 million for that period. We still had an increase, but it was just lower than the 4.4% average annual rate of growth that we had seen during the look-back period. So the $1.4 million is a known at this point in time. We can pretty conservatively project another $600,000 or so for the upcoming current calendar year 2021. I mean, that would give $2 million total that we could, at this point in time, feel comfortable in considering as lost revenue. And then what happens here is the lost revenue, if you utilize this, this area of the ARPA, you just need to take that lost revenue and use it to, what you pull from ARPA to replace the lost revenue to provide any form of governmental services. It's extremely broad. It really is a mechanism that provides some real flexibility to local governments. I mentioned administrative expenses, which are allowed, costs for planning, reporting, managing the programs and projects that we do through the ARPA monies. We're thinking conservatively, we, over time, would incur about $50,000 to $100,000 in administrative expenses that could be used or reimbursed with ARPA monies. So a handful of other considerations. There are some very specific and eligible uses that are identified in the legislation. We can't take the ARPA money and put it into the reserve fund. We can't take the money and use it to pay down our pension unfunded liability. We can't use it to make debt service payments. We can't use it to pay litigation costs. It's a fairly small list, but those are a handful of the ineligible uses that are identified. So we talked about the performance period. Costs must be incurred starting March 3rd of 2021 up until December 31st of 2024. However, if we're using this money to address impacts suffered by residents and businesses, those impacts that they incurred prior to that point in time can be considered, and the funding can be utilized to mitigate those impacts.
Tim, here's my thought on that also, is that 2024, we have that up to then.
Correct.
Whatever we do here, though, I would say let's do as quickly as possible, because that'd be almost a 1.5 to 2 year lag in time in funding folks that have been impacted. So I think we need to do what we can as fast as possible.
Agreed. In particular, the support to businesses and residents that are affected.
Right.
That right there would be the most, should be the first money out the gate.
Right. I agree. Thank you.
Just another point to make, there are a handful of other ARPA funded programs that are separate from the direct allocation that we are receiving. This money is not going to flow directly to Santee, but there are potential opportunities to tap into it. For example, the Coronavirus Capital Projects Fund, there's $10 billion nationwide. That money is going to states, territories, and tribal governments only. The guidelines have not come out on that money. It's anticipated that it will be a competitive program. We may have the ability to access some of that money through the state of California. Those guidelines aren't out yet, but we'll keep our eye on it, and if there's opportunities there, we'll definitely be back, seeing what we can do. A couple of other programs, a Homeowners Assistance Fund and an Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Again, we don't have direct access to those monies. They go to the state level. It's yet to be seen how the state is going to potentially open those up for local jurisdictions. So here's a snapshot of the categories that we just discussed. We identified what we considered a low end of a range and a high end of the range, just to kind of get a point of reference on how the $7.325 million could potentially be allocated. This here is just kind of a tool, a guide for the council to helping us hear what your priorities are and how best to allocate these monies. So at this point, we're looking for your input and direction regarding your priorities for the use of the funding. We're planning to come back to the council at your first meeting in August with something a little more specific based on what we hear this evening. And the final point, which has already been made, at any point, the allocations can be amended by the city council and redirected as conditions change. And with that, we're ready to hear your thoughts.
Ron, are you first on this, or?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Go back to the last slide for me. The negative impacts, the public health, I assume that's just buying more supplies, or what we're talking about. That would be good. I think I'd rather go on the high ranges, get as much as we can on those, because we're gonna use them eventually, so it's something that we could have available. Obviously, doesn't look like the infrastructure is gonna change on that one. The impact communities, do you honestly, where do we feel that we stand, I guess is the question. The rents are, I mean, either they're back, I would think a lot of the people are back to work, or they're not back to work, or they're,
Well, and what you're talking about would be the negative economic impacts category. So, I mean, that's a fairly broad range, and if the demand was there, we could go heavier than that.
Yeah. Didn't we have a problem with the demand last time?
We had some grants that went very easily, others that took a little extra time to get out. The hardest ones were the CDBG requirements were very difficult for businesses to meet. But we do have other grant programs that were very successful and very highly used. And again, these are some of the kinds of dollars that we could use to assist specific industries here in our community that maybe need a little extra hand to help us with some of our other goals.
Well, and again, I think we should look at that, but I think the 250 range might be okay with me on that one. The revenue replacement, I think administrative, I don't think we really need to spend a lot on that one. The revenue, I'm a little hesitant on too, on that one. I'd rather put it into items where we can show, I mean, obviously there's people that are paying rents for people. I don't know where that stands at this point, because it's been, 15, 16 months at that point. So a lot of people may have moved on where we're at, but I know with the businesses, we may still have a few of them out there that may want to do it. But I would love to see it put into the infrastructure, and then any public health or whatever we need to get stuff bought and get ready for the recoveries. So that's my suggestion. I'm not gonna put dollars on it though.
There was a point of reference that I forgot to mention in the presentation that may be helpful. The residential support and the small business support programs, using CARES Act money, we spent about $730,000 total for all of the programs that fall under that umbrella. And the small business programs tended to be the ones that were most heavily utilized.
Right. And I mean, are we still getting requests for it, or are they either gone out of business or moved on?
Well, those programs, for the most part, have closed. I know that Pam is working specifically with the East County EDC on trying to wrap up, our final grant programs, but there's no more applications being accepted for those.
Well, could there be though? I mean, if we reopen that using some of this money.
Yes, sir. If council chooses, we can add more money to that same program.
Yeah, because I know there are businesses that are at the point where their landlords have said, well, we don't really care, you haven't paid us in 6 months, even though they were closed during that time. And there's just some landlords out there that aren't very forgivable. Well, yeah, back rent. So I think we should open some of that back up, put a little more money into that. Laura?
Okay, my priorities for high end of range funding first would be the one with the most flexibility for us, seems to be revenue replacement. So I would fully fund that one, because then we can figure out what we want to do with it, and we're not tied to a category. Number two, addressing the homelessness issue, I think is important. And I don't necessarily know that we have to fully fund that, but we have to find out what that price point is so we can get a fair amount of beds to serve Santee. Number three, infrastructure. I think this is a great opportunity for us to take care of some issues that we know we have, and they're very expensive. Four, I have the cost of the 2 reinstated employees, because we weren't able to have them back during COVID, so why not use the funds for that? And it's not big dollar amounts there. I really am not too keen on the YMCA Aquatic Center upgrades. I do remember the big upgrade. I mean, I've toured the facility, so I just have some questions about that. Public health, I had as number 6. And
Laura, can I interrupt just a second, please? Sure. Bill, what is the lease payment to the city for the YMCA annually?
Well, there's an old saying that a pool is a hole in the ground to which you throw money. And someone 20 years ago was very wise to get the YMCA to maintain the pool for us for 20 years. And they have done that with their funds. Right now, they're short on funds because they had lost revenue for a year and a half. And so they're just requesting to help us out, or for us to help them out to restore the mechanical systems of the pool, which are now 20 years old. The pumps, the filters.
Yes, the question though.
I think that, they would fall into the category of a business asking for help, not paying for a specific, which is, $300,000. No other business is going to get $300,000, and that's a lot of money. So I think they fall into the category of all other businesses that are looking for help due to lost revenue, and we should put them in that category.
But still,
You had a question, yeah.
yeah, how much do they pay in a lease per year to the city of Santee?
I think they have $1 a year lease.
It's $1.
But then they assume the maintenance of the swimming pool and the lifeguarding.
Okay, I get that. So it's, I'm absolutely with Laura on this. I think they should come into a category of business, identify what their needs are, and then address it from there.
Right, and just like any other business, local business coming to us, they all get a dollar amount, whatever that dollar amount is. And then how they use it, that's on them. So, did I go through my list? Did I catch them all?
No, I don't think you got it. I interrupted you.
Did I poke him on them?
Yes, you did.
I thought I did get them all.
You
Okay,
did.
thank you. Well, then that's last, but put it in there. Thank you.
All right, then. That's done.
So this is actually a pretty easy one for me. I had my top 2. It's infrastructure, number 1. We need to put as much money into infrastructure as we can. So I need Scott, Carl, you guys, identify projects, figure out where the money, what projects can be funded within the next year here. Because like Mr. Mayor said, I like to see this money spent within the fiscal year coming up, as you get it, obviously, Tim, or as the city gets it. It's not waiting 22, 23, 24, because we have a timeline. We want to make an impact now with the one-time monies that we have. Second is the reimbursement to the city. That was I only had 2 initially, but I am going to add a third one here. The revenue replacement to the city gives us the most flexibility to do with the money that we need. We can get the money back into the coffers, back into the general fund, and take care of, appropriate way. Like you said, Tim, it gives us the most flexibility. And I am going to add the third back into the disproportionately impacted communities, because we as a city council did make a priority back in as a goal setting for the homeless situation. So we do need to look at that seriously, and with this one-time money, we can make an impact to our goals. So, simple. Thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, actually, I am spot on with Councilmember Trotter. It's number 1 is infrastructure. Those are the things, those are the non-sexy items that people don't want to vote on and don't want to see, but need to happen. And we need to make sure they happen before cars fall into streets. So yeah, that's number 1 without a doubt. Number 2 to me is definitely the revenue replacement, and because then that just like it's been said before, it just gives us the autonomy to put the monies where we see the need, not just now but in the future. So it still could go to other items. It gives us the ability to control our own destiny a little bit more. Third would be the disproportionately impacted communities. As Councilmember Trotter stated, this was one of our priorities, but more important to me is it's probably the number 1 complaint I get within the community is issues, transiency, just all of it that goes with it. So if we can, we've been looking for ways to come up with money to make a meaningful impact in that realm, and this is probably the biggest chunk of change that I've ever seen at one time to be able to make some sort of impact, and I'd like to see us take full advantage of it, even if those are the only 3 things that we did.
You know, I agree with that. I think maybe staff, we might want to identify community-based groups that have dynamic programs in that area. And probably the Sheriff's Department, your HEART team, or HOPE team, I mean, probably have already, sorry, old ideas. I think they probably might even know already what some of those groups might be to help. So, and I think Rob's right. Let's see how we can fund them, but let's
meaningfully.
Yeah, meaningfully.
Not just throwing money at a group to say we did something. It's
my point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is that it?
Yes, that's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
I believe we need a motion to approve staff recommendation.
Well, it's
Actually,
just,
yeah, we don't have a recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, no, this
is all us.
This is direction.
Direction. Got it.
Yeah, direction for staff, kind of put that back together and kind of based on what we were saying here tonight.
Right, we'll be back at the next meeting with something, bringing it all together.
That died for lack of second, by the way. All right, let's go on to the next item, which is item number 16, a resolution authorizing the execution of a first amendment to the professional services agreement with Recon, Environmental Incorporation for environmental consulting services related to the rezoning of properties in accordance with the housing element. Oh, that's a mouthful, Melanie.
Okay, is that my cue to begin?
Affirmative.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Recon is currently under contract with the city to prepare the program EIR associated with the rezonings of properties identified in our adopted housing element. This item requests that the City Council authorize the First Amendment to the agreement with Recon to undertake the unanticipated work that HCD required of us to prepare the affirmatively furthering fair housing, and also for the by right sites that we've identified. We need to do some additional environmental analysis associated with those. So the amendment, it reflects $22,360, and if you authorize the amendment, we will get going on it with Recon. We'll process the First Amendment to get started.
Okay. Speakers?
No speakers.
Thank you. The motion to approve by Hall. Is there a second or council comments or questions?
This is, frankly, it's something that it's an add-on to what we're being required to do that we weren't originally supposed to have to do, and so yeah, we've got a little choice other than having to provide additional staff to do it and figure out how to do it when you've got people that can do it faster and not take up staff time. So that would be a long way to say, I second the motion.
Thank you very much. I have a motion in a second. Please prepare to vote.
Mayor Mento, did you lock in your vote?
I got my speaker assignments up here.
You just learn how to use the equipment.
Yeah, first one, clear list or one of those.
Yeah, no, that's not. No. I pushed on it. There we go.
I'm sorry, you're too late. Motion carries unanimously. You voted aye, right?
Thanks for voting for me.
That's what she normally does.
That is correct.
Well, I was supposed to say it out loud. I was like, oops.
Okay, that takes us to item number 17. Sorry. Okay, item number 17, resolution authorizing city manager to execute a First Amendment to the professional service agreement with Harrison Associates for the safety and environmental justice element. Melanie.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. We are asking for the city manager's authorization to execute a First Amendment to the existing contract with Harris to complete our safety element update. What we have learned since we started on the environmental justice section of the safety element is that it became much more data intensive than we thought, and updating the safety element now includes climate change and adaptation and other hazards to a higher degree. Fire safety is one of them. And so what we're asking is for the additional funds to have Harris prepare the entire element and not just the environmental justice section of the element. This is a new territory for us as well. And the funds for this were appropriated in the adopted budget. So it was introduced as a request with the budget.
And is that based on a state statute?
Yes, all of this is based on state requirements.
Mr. Mayor,
Correct.
being that there's no speakers,
I did not.
I said being that there's no speakers, I'd like to move staff recommendation.
I have a motion by McNellis, second by Koval. Please prepare to vote. Please vote. And please lock in your vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. That takes us to, non-agenda public comment. Speaker slips.
Yes, sir, we have one speaker, Michael Ranson.
You already had one tonight.
Different topic. This actually, I did bring this to talk about this tonight, but it was appropriate because Council Member Trotter mentioned something. You mentioned something. City Manager talked about creativity. A couple of months ago, my wife and I went to a fest. It's called Tiny Fest at Del Mar Fairgrounds. We thought we'd be there for an hour or two. We spent the entire day there because we were amazed at what you can do with an ADU, what you can do with a 9 by 20 foot space, how you can make money by doing an ADU. You can do an ADU, rent it out now. You can switch and rent your main home later and use your ADU as a place to come back to. I mean, there's a ton of options, and excuse me, they're also nice looking. You don't have to have just a basic ADU. You can do a tiny little cottage, a tiny little home. There's a ton of creativity out there, and the organization actually travels around and they do these fairs throughout the country. They do try and reach out to different cities and get people from the city to attend a municipal day prior to the festival. And they said that they've tried to reach out to cities. They don't know if they did reach out to Santee or not, but there's that option in the future. So, building on that, while I was there, just because I'm interested in myself, I collected an entire folder full of information about ADUs, about tiny homes, about what they call attainable housing, not affordable, but attainable housing. I'm also going to become a member of the Tiny Home Industry Association and find out some more information about it. And I would like very much to share this with the appropriate person, with the Development Services Department, if she would like to have it. I don't want to take up a bunch of her time. I know they have obviously a ton of things that you're doing. You work very hard. But I would love it if there was some time allocated for me putting this together in a nice presentation to give to them, or use me to gather more information. But there are people in Santee that need some help with understanding how to do an ADU, the potential of the ADU. Councilmember Trotter talked about the plans that are available. Yes, there's plans that are available, but I know that the client is overwhelmed by that. The plans might be on online, but they don't know what to do with them. So I'd like to suggest we work towards having some sort of workshop or our own little festival in the spring on how in Santee you can do your own ADU and have it look great. Okay.
And I'd say, Mike, I do have a contact for that too, by the way. So.
You have a contact. Okay.
That's a good idea, Mike. Thank you.
So it's all here.
Great, thanks. Is that it?
No further speakers.
Thank you very much. That takes us to city council reports. Ron? Laura?
Yes. Sorry. So I attended the Sandag Borders Committee meeting and, had some thoughts going away from that meeting that I wanted to share with whoever's listening, because it's really important what's about to happen in the city of San Diego. And I started with the premise, what would I do if my job was to run public transportation? And I just really think Sandag has the model wrong. They're not focusing on, I'm saying it publicly, that they have the model wrong. Because if I were running it, I would focus on the safety and cleanliness of the product you're actually selling to the public. By the way, that only 2% of the public uses, and 98% of the rest of the public pays for that transportation. Yes, I am talking MTS. So it's not safe, it's not clean. I've said this many, many times. I've said it to the directors of MTS, and they know, but they lack funds to make it safe and clean. And of course, I've said it to Hassan Ikrada many times here when he presented to us. At this point, it's lip service. They really don't care, because his management style is like someone in corporate sales. And I'm definitely used to corporate sales with my time with the Padres, and in that world, you assume the sale. And you don't care what other people think, and if they don't think like you, well, you compliment the ones that believe in your vision, and you say complimentary things about them. But if they disagree with you, and if they disagree with your track and tax model, which is basically what the Sandag model is, and if you don't know what that means, I implore you to look that up, then you are not a forward-thinking person, you're not a visionary. I thought, like, well, this is 20th century technology that you're looking at. I would think going in a rocket into space is forward-thinking technology, not building more trolleys and building more bus lines. But that's just me. But I'm not a visionary, because I do not believe that we should tax and track every single vehicle in San Diego County, and we are already paying the largest gas tax in the country. I don't think we need to add on top of that to hopefully one day get the ridership from MTS from 2% to maybe 10%, and 90% of the population is going to pay for this. So I think it's a failed vision. I don't agree with it. And if we get a chance to vote on it one day, I just want the people of Santee to know that this is not for us. We're not in this vision. The 52, they put it on a piece of paper, but it's not going to be funded. And we will be paying for trolleys and buses in locations we will never, ever use. So that's my report.
Thank you. That's that.
Yes, sir. Last Thursday, I attended the River Conservancy meeting, which I'm sit on the committee there, and I'll report back to you guys that was able to secure $500,000 coming to the city of Santee through a grant from the state of California through the River Conservancy that will directly go to the river bottom safety plan that we made a priority earlier this year. So it's a great job by our staff, CSD and Tom Romstant, to make that happen. But spoke on that, made it happen, and we got money coming. I think it's by the 22nd of this month, right, Bill? Something like that?
Correct.
Yeah. So
What took so long?
immediate impact. That's it. And then, like I said, the Public Works earlier are working hard, so got even more money to clear the brush out, get that river bottom thinned out a little bit more, because it's a mess. So. No.
Well, the band, the River Bottom Band. So I don't know. Every time you say it, I think of that.
That's it.
All right. Rob.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of observations, and as we're all getting out and into the open and into our parks and onto our trails, I got a problem with our parks and some of our trails. So, like, that whole section of Town Center Community Park East that was all fenced off, and the grass is dead. Dead. And what's not dead is weeded. Like I normally, every 4th of July, walk around barefoot, and I had to go back and get my flip-flops on because I was getting stickers in my feet. That's not normal, and this was part of our park that was protected from everybody because of COVID, and so nobody could use it, and now that it's open, I don't want to use it. The other part is our trails. They're being severely vandalized. They're being destroyed. And it's that old broken window theory. You have one broken window in a home, it starts leading to graffiti, and the graffiti starts leading to gang violence, and so on and so forth. Well, we've got a lot of broken windows right now, and I'm seeing more graffiti popping up, and it's not getting taken care of like it used to. We used to have an ordinance that was done within 24 hours. It's not being done. I don't know if we can do something with our sheriff's department to just maybe get a 2-time-a-day walk through on a trail, just randomly. It doesn't have to be the specific same time every day. In fact, I would rather it not be. But I think that would do one of two things, because I'm told that nobody knew that it looked like that. Well, if we have a deputy going through and saying, hey, you guys, this looks like hell, you got to take care of this, then we can't say we didn't know about it, number one. But number two, just the sheer presence of a uniformed peace officer does a lot to deter people from being very bold and not knowing when they're going to walk through and catch them in an act. I think that's, it's not going to solve it. I know it's not going to solve it, but it will help with, at the very least, help our citizens feel a little more safe when they walk through if they happen to cross a uniformed officer at the same time. And they will know that it's being watched. These are the things that from day one, it was the no graffiti thing was truly one of my biggest passions, and I'm starting to feel ashamed of driving around and seeing how rampant it's growing and how fast it's happening, and we're not doing something about it. So I would really like to see a concentrated effort. I don't know if we're using some of these funds maybe to take care of that, because it's something that we couldn't have city staff do before because of COVID. Now we can. I don't, whatever you want to call it, but this is something we need to get our finger back on, because that is what helps our citizens. I always talk about, when you ask somebody in Santee, why do you feel safe in Santee? They can't truly quantify what it is, but when you don't feel safe, it's very easy to quantify why you don't. And these are the things that make us not feel safe, and I think we need to address them sooner rather than later.
Vice Mayor, I have a question. What part of the trail are you talking about?
The Eastern Trail, Mass Trail.
On Mass Park West.
Mass Park West, is that what it is? Yeah. Yeah, it's, the trash cans were burned out, all the placards that were out there been all spray painted and graffitied.
Yeah.
And just the trash that's around it everywhere. But even all around there, I've seen on utility boxes now, just the same graffiti signs that are being thrown up. But they look like really thick marker, like very, very thick marker. It's not paint, it's not spray paint, but it's, it's fast, it's easy, but nonetheless, that's what we always said we would get rid of. So
I saw that on the path of the trail from the Mass Bridge to behind Carlton Oaks Country Club. The same
Right.
thing.
Yeah. Can we use any of those funds to maybe pay for some extra staffing or even sheriffs?
Well, hold on, Marlene, if you don't mind. So, share a little bit, you guys. I spent the last couple weeks, I walked all that, and actually the city manager and I took a field trip on Monday, walked Mass Park and the trail there. Sam and his staff, along with our contract services, they did a heck of a lot of work this week because a lot of these issues were identified in there. So we are, and Bill, you guys can maybe speak for yourself here on the conscious effort that I think we talked vigorously about on Monday of some of the things either that have been unfortunately kind of forgotten either by our contract services or some of the pandemic stuff of why it's not gotten done. There's no excuse why I'm not getting done. We talked about that at extent, right, Sam? But there was an aggressive attack on that section this week. I don't know about the other areas. I just can only talk about Mass Park and Mass Park West because and I asked the city manager to take a field trip with me on Monday, and she did, and we spent an hour and a half walking the parks and trails over in that area only.
Do we still have that volunteer patrol around the volunteer groups?
Your volunteers?
Well, not senior volunteers, it was for pathway volunteers, the trail volunteers.
Yes, the San Diego River Park Foundation has a volunteer group that they have t-shirts with their park patrol words on it, and they go out and they give us reports.
I'm just wondering, is it still staffed? With COVID, everybody may disappear.
It was in remission during COVID, but now we believe it'll be starting back up again.
Spend some of that money and try and get some more volunteers.
Well, and part of the issue too is you can't see it from a vehicle. The stuff that, we see and, Sam, no, I mean, if I'm taking a walk, I'll ching and take a picture and I still use the My Santee app. So, but you have to be literally, down in there.
That's what I'm saying,
and it's not safe I don't like going down there alone, ever. It's not safe.
And that's not what a trail is supposed to be about.
Okay, thank you. Is that
point made?
Okay. And I have been attending those Sandag meetings, so that's why we chuckle up here when we hear a report like that, because sometimes you just want to shake your head and pull your hair out when, Ron's right almost all the time now. But we haven't had a lot of meetings yet right now to talk about infrastructure and things. We've mostly been given, we've been told what we're going to do. And it's difficult because there's a certain number of folks on it that are board members who have decided that everything they're told is the best thing to do. And that's the majority voting. So those who are visionaries and free thinkers don't necessarily have much of a voice, and that would be pretty much most of East County. Coastal region, it pretty much controls everything. They like the shiny rails, with the trolleys and everything, and they're not really concerned a lot about whether or not we have a better transportation system out here. A couple years ago, maybe a little bit longer now, Ron and I, we fought like cats and dogs just to keep a bus system in Santee. They wanted to remove pretty much the whole thing. And I remember them doing advertising and never even mentioned any kind of services east of the 15. So it's a complete fight. I'm there fighting for them, trying to be a voice of reason, but that's kind of a futile endeavor.
Could I make a recommendation to take back to them? If you would, I just thought of this, but that challenge that was going around, the 75-day hard or something like that. It's basically a fitness challenge, and you're supposed to drink a certain amount of water, and a lot of the kids are doing it. My daughter did it. And anyway, for 75 days, you have to do this thing. I would challenge them for 75 days, and they can't be on vacation. For 75 days, they have to use public transportation, no private vehicles, and live it. Because until they do, it's really easy to tell us how to live, but None of them on that committee take public transportation as a way of life. And I believe the president is a female, and I really challenge her to do it because it's not safe. I think she'd give up after, a couple days. So just take that back.
Well, I take back that challenge, but they already took the 75-day Kool-Aid challenge. Sorry about that. No, I'm not. And also, just to let you know that the League of California Cities is having their Board of Directors meeting tomorrow and Friday. I will be attending that. And believe it or not, it's in San Diego for the first time in who knows how many years. Probably since Jim Madaffer was the president of, or chairman of the league, and that's been a long time. So we'll find out what's going on. We're going to be discussing a lot of those bills that I brought up earlier. And so I'll be beating my head against the wall trying to get those folks to not support those bills. So anyhow, that's all I have. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We take your comments to heart and we'll move forward on every way that we can to try to get things cleaned up. We want people to be safe and feel comfortable here in Santee. Part of that is all the events that we have, and I'll just close for those that are listening at home on TV that we do have concerts coming up again. Check our city website, SanteeSpecialEvents.com as well. We have a concert tomorrow night, as a matter of fact, Town Center Park East, and it's gonna be fantastic. So
Back to
it's
the garden?
Wingstop. Yeah, Wingstop.
Oh, Wingstop tomorrow, okay.
So it's gonna be a lot of fun. So don't miss out, and have a great summer.
Okay. Counselor.
No report, Mayor.
Thanks. So you're gonna be able to defend us when we get sued for the comments earlier?
I'm always here to defend you.
Thank you, sir.
You so much.
Sid, plug anything?
Shaking his head during the whole
Yes, sir.
thing, but he's
Nothing, sir.
Great. Let's see, that takes us to closed session, which is items number 18, 19. 18 is conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. And item number 19 is conference with real property negotiators. So let's go ahead and recess to closed session. Thank you for those of you who've stuck around all this time, and for those of you that are crazy enough to stick around while we're in closed session. Let the record reflect we are back in council meeting. All council members present and accounted for. Item number 18 and 19, we received report from staff and council. And that's it. Meeting adjourned.